Hi everyone, welcome to our virtual class of Ed 301, the teacher and the school curriculum. I am Rochele and Alido and let's learn together about Unit 2, Foundations of Curriculum. For this unit, we have four foundations of curriculum and these are philosophical foundations, psychological foundations, historical sociological foundations, and legal foundations. These are learning objectives for today's discussion. So after the lesson, students are able to interpret thoughts or personal reflections about philosophical foundations through a four-stanza poem, list the characteristics of a philosophical foundations, and define philosophical foundations by making an infographic. Do you have any philosophy of education? So as future educators, what is your philosophy in education? Some of you might say that education is a social construct in which learning is effective when social interaction is involved. Some of you might say that learning is effective when learners are free to express their emotions or interpretations about social issues. And some of you might say that the lessons are effective or understandable when it is related to real life situations. Keep your philosophy and education in mind and let's see if they will change after we discuss about philosophical foundations. Prior to our discussion, let's have first the definition of philosophy of education. So what is philosophy of education? Philosophy of education is the study of questions such as what is education? What is the purpose of education? What does it mean to know something? And what is the relationship between education and society? So philosophy of education recognizes that the development of a civil society depends on the education of the young as responsible, thoughtful, and enterprising citizens, which is a challenging task requiring deep understanding of ethical principles, moral values, political theory, and understanding the children themselves. We are now in Unit 2, Foundations of Curriculum. So foundations of curriculum are the considerations of educational programs and policies in the light of an interdisciplinary endeavor involving philosophical, psychological, social, and historical understandings to name a few. The foundations of curriculum set the external boundaries of the knowledge of curriculum and define what constitutes valid sources from which to derive the field theories, principles, and ideas. So for this unit, we have four foundations of curriculum, namely philosophical foundations, psychological foundations, historical sociological foundations, and legal foundations. Today's discussion, let's learn together about philosophical foundations. Based upon fundamental beliefs that arise from one's philosophy of education curricular, decisions involve consideration of several topics and issues. Precisely for this reason, we consider philosophy one of the major foundation areas in curriculum. Studying philosophy helps us deal with our own personal systems of beliefs and values, like the way we perceive the world around us and how we define what is important to us. As philosophical issues have always influenced society and institutions of learning, a study of philosophy of education in terms of curriculum development is essential. In essence, a philosophy of education influences and to a large extent determines our educational decisions and alternatives. One important step in developing a personal philosophy of education is to understand the various alternatives and others have developed over the years. Here we shall look into the following four major philosophical positions that have influenced curriculum development. So we have idealism, realism, pragmatism, and existentialism. So let's discuss first idealism. Idealism suggests that matter is an illusion and that reality exists mentally. It emphasizes moral and spiritual reality as the chief explanations of the world and considers moral absolute, timeless, and universal. If we apply this view to education, what would be the implications for the role of teachers and curriculum in education? Obviously, teachers would act as role models of enduring values. And the school must be highly constructed and ought to advocate only those ideas that demonstrate enduring values. The materials used for instruction, therefore, would center on broad ideas, particularly those contained in great works of literature or scriptures. So, idealism is not in the line with the beliefs of those who equate learning with acquisition of specific facts and various disciplines. Next is we have realism. Realism views the world in terms of object and matter. They believe that human behavior is rational when conforms to the laws of nature and is governed by social laws. So when applied to education, those ideas begin to reveal a second possible philosophy of education. So what kind of philosophy will that be? Realists consider education a matter of reality rather than speculation. For application, the paramount responsibility of the teachers then is to impart to learners the knowledge about the world they live in. What scholars of various disciplines have discovered about the world constitutes to the knowledge. Next is we have pragmatism. In contrast to the traditional philosophies like idealism and realism, pragmatism gives importance to change, processes, and relativity as it suggests that the value of an idea lies in its actual consequences. The actual consequences are related to those aims that focus on practical aspects in teaching and learning. So, according to pragmatists, learning occurs as the person engages in transacting with the environment. So, curriculum, according to the pragmatist, should be planned that teaches the learner how to think critically rather than what to think. Teaching should therefore be more exploratory in nature than explanatory. And learning takes place in the active way as learners solve problems which help them widen the horizons of their knowledge and reconstruct their experiences in consonance with the changing world. So, what then might be the role of the teacher? The role is not simply to disseminate information, but to construct situations that involve both direct experience with the world of the learner and the opportunities to understand these experiences. Next is we have existentialism. This emphasizes that there are no values outside human beings and thus suggests that human beings should have the freedom to make choices and then be responsible of the consequences of those choices. The unextend An existentialist curriculum, therefore, would consist of experiences and subjects that lend themselves to philosophical dialogue and acts of making choices, stressing self expressive activities, experimentation, and media that illustrate emotions and insights. The teacher then takes on a non directive role. The tender is viewed as a partner in the process of learning. As a professional, the teacher serves as a resource facilitating the individual's search for personal meaning rather than imposing some predetermined values or interest on learners. Each of the four major philosophies just describe beginnings with a particular view of human nature and of values and truths, and then proceeds to suggest what such a view implies for curriculum development. Before we conclude our discussion on the philosophical foundations of curriculum, we should make note of a few educational philosophies in order to reinforce what has been said so far. Although aspects of educational philosophy can be derived from the roots of idealism, realism, pragmatism, and existentialism, a common approach is to provide a pattern of educational philosophies which derives from the major schools of philosophy. So I have here following four educational philosophies for their implications in the area of curriculum development. So we have perennialism, progressivism, essentialism, and reconstructionism. So first, let's discuss about perennialism. Perennial means everlasting. It advocates the permanency of knowledge that has stood the test of time and values that have a moral and spiritual basis. The underlying idea is that education is constant, absolute, and universal. The curriculum of the perennialist is subject-centered. The teacher is viewed as an authority in the particular discipline, and teaching is considered an art of imparting information or knowledge and stimulating discussion. In such a scheme of things, students are regarded immature as they lack the judgment required to determine what should be studied, and also that their interests demand little attention as far as curriculum development is concerned. Their emphasis is on testing students, enforcing tougher academic standards or programs, and on identifying and encouraging talented students. Next is progressivism. This emerges as a protest against perennialist thinking in education. According to progressivist thought, the skills and tools of learning include problem solving methods and scientific inquiry. In addition, learning experiences should include cooperative behavior and self discipline. The curriculum thus was interdisciplinary in nature, and the teacher was seen as a guide for the students in their problem solving and scientific projects. Then we have essentialism. Essentialism comes from the word essential, which means the main things or the basics. As an educational philosophy, it advocates instilling in students with the essentials or basics of academic knowledge and character development. Essentialism was grounded in a conservative philosophy that argues that schools should not try to radically reshape society. Rather, they should transmit traditional moral values and intellectual knowledge that students need to become model citizens. This philosophy, rooted partly in idealism and partly in realism, evolved mainly as a critique of progressive thought in education. Thus, in essentialism, learning should consist in mastering the subject matter that reflects currently available knowledge in various disciplines. So, teachers play a high directive role by disseminating information to the students. Lastly, we have Reconstructionism. It views education as a means of reconstructing society. The Reconstructionists believe that as school or college is attended by youth, it must be used as a means to reshape the attitudes and values of each generation. As a result, when the youth become adults, they will share certain common values, and thus the society will have reshaped itself. As for the curriculum, it must promote new social, economic, and political education. The subject matter is to be used as a vehicle for studying social problems, which must serve as the focus of the curriculum. So those are the following philosophical foundations in education. So what insights did you gain from the discussion on the philosophical foundations of curriculum? So ideas about curriculum and teaching do not arise in a vacuum. As curriculum development is heavily influenced by philosophy, those involved in such planning should be clear about contemporary dominant philosophy. If we are unclear about our philosophy of education, our curriculum plans and teaching procedures will tend to be inconsistent and confused. Further, we need to be constantly open to new ideas and insights that may lead to a revision or refinement of our philosophies. In essence, what we need is a prudent philosophy, one that is politically and economically feasible and that serves the needs of the students and society. It is here that open distance education comes forth with its promises for the future. That's all for our discussion today. Thank you so much for learning with me. Again, I am Rochele and Alido. See you on our next